Hi, and welcome to the Dibble Institute's September webinar. Before we officially get started in 45 seconds, why don't you put in the chat box who you are, what organization you're with, and what city you're sitting in right now. That'd be super interesting to us to see the breadth of people here. So please share your in chat where you're coming to us from. There we go, Freeport, Illinois. Pima, Partner Prevention. Hi, Deanne. Nice to see you. Tallahassee, City of Newark. Wow, Columbus, Wyoming. These presenters are from Montana, so close to home. Columbus, Fresno. You go, Fresno. Dallas, Tennessee. Super fun. Lansing, Michigan. One of our staff's in Michigan. Jasper, Alabama. Albany, Georgia. Sacramento. Pro Youth and Families. Hi, Pro. Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. Wow, very cool. Tulsa. Just had a big training in Stillwater last week. More from Fresno. Okay, so before we get started, Rachel, why don't you share how we're going to? So I'm Kay Reed, I'm the executive director, and this is my colleague, Rachel Savasek-Luxton, Dr. Savasek-Luxton. Will you please tell us how we're going to use chat and Q&A today?
Yes, so we are going to keep the chat open while Kay does our introduction slides to Dibble so that we can keep hearing from you all of where you're joining us from today. Once the presenters get on and start going, we are going to close down the chat until they have prompts and discussion points. Then we'll open the chat back up for you to respond in. If you have questions, we are going to ask you to locate the Q&A box in your control panel. All questions should go there. We just want to make sure nothing gets missed. And if it gets sent in the chat when there is, as we see here, a lot of engagement, there's a chance that that's going to happen. So we're going to close the chat down, encourage you all, or ask, plead for you all to just include any questions that you have in the Q&A. So we'll cue you when the chat opens back up, but outside of that, all communication and questions should go through the Q&A channel.
Great. Thank you for that bit of housekeeping. So as I said, I'm Kay Reed. I welcome you to our September webinar where we're going to talk about relationship um, violence perpetrated with money. Who knew? So we're excited for this conversation to happen. And as Rachel just said, um, well, we'll start at the top. If you can't hear us, as they do with all things technology, start over or dial in with the number on your invitation. Thank you for adding who you are in the chat box. We're super excited. We will put handouts in the chat in the control panel through the course of the event, and we'll also send you any handouts after this is over. As Rachel said, put questions in the Q&A box. And if you would like closed captions, you can do that. You can toggle that on yourself. We can't do that for you. So it's in your control panel at the bottom of the screen. Okay, next, Rachel. So the Dibble Institute, we're named after Charlie and Helen Dibble. People often ask me where we come from. And Charlie was primarily the driver of this. He was an engineer, so a fix-it guy by trade. He saw how relationships, either young people weren't confident about having and keeping long-lasting, committed relationships, or when their parents' marriages or relationships went south, how it impacted children. So Charlie, back in the day, talked to leading researchers, and they were just starting to understand how you could create long-lasting, stable, healthy, nurturing relationships. But when he asked them this question, what are you doing for kids or teens? They would say, nothing. They're too hard to find. We don't do that. And so Charlie had the great idea of collecting research and turning it into teaching tools that could be made widely available throughout the country. So next slide. So today, now some 20, 30 years later, this is our last year's map. It used to be when we did this map, there'd be white spaces, but now our programs are used all across the country. Last year, serving close to 115,000 youth. Now, let me just discuss that. We are not a direct service provider. When I say we, That's the royal we, which is you. So we have people all across the country who are teaching our programs every day of the week to lots and lots of teenagers, and we're so thrilled to be able to support them and for them to support our mission. We're an independent national nonprofit. We're a publisher that focuses on one specific area. Next slide. So what we do is we work to empower youth to build and sustain healthy interpersonal and romantic relationships. There's lots of people who are doing interpersonal relationship work, and we think that's very important, but hardly anybody is working with young people on their love lives. And so that's where the niche that we fit in is really helping young people get smart about their love lives. Okay, next slide. So some of our core values. We're big fans of research. And I heard a quote recently that said science is just, one hypothesis away from a change, right? So we believe in research and we move our materials to comport with research, but things change. We get more information. And so you can be assured that our materials are up to date because we're always including the newest research. It's not just based on what we believe, it's actually what is effective, what we know to be true. And we also believe in safe, stable, and nurturing families. Um, Many of our programs deal with family formation, and we're big fans of marriage, but marriage isn't necessarily the silver bullet for safe, stable, and nurturing. There's lots of single parents and cohabiting parents that can create this space, and that's what's super important for young people to thrive, is that their families are safe, stable, and nurturing. And we hope we can make an impact on that nationally. And we also believe that relationship education is for everyone, young, old, doesn't matter, inner city, urban, rural, whatever. Um, Relationship education can help us all with our relationships. And that includes Rachel and me. So, we all could use it. So we're big fans of like, get some. All righty. So a little bit about how we got here today. So we worked with Sybil Solomon, and that's her picture, who said she couldn't be here today. We worked with her many, 10, 15 years ago to use her money habitudes, which she had developed for adults and had started to work with youth, a card deck that helps you understand your habits and attitudes around money. We worked with her to develop a program for teenagers and a program for young adults. And so you can go to dibbleInstitute.org and find those programs. That's not what we're here to talk about today, but just to put it in context. When Sybil retired, and I was just talking with the two presenters, so next slide, please, about what a force of nature Sybil is. So she has a new project called Safe and Sound Info, safeandsoundinfo.org. And it's a place that really talks about economic abuse. Everything on it is free. And it's about relationships and money and how people, I don't want to, anyway, people who don't have good intent can really scar and damage people by manipulating them through money. So I'm not the expert here. I'm going to call on um, Cicely and, Cecilia and Christy to come up here. Now, both Christy and Cecilia work for safe, abuse-free environments in the Bitterroot Valley of Montana. For those of you who are scratching your heads and wondering where Bitterroot Valley is, it is south of Missoula, so in the great state of Montana. Chris, the community program coordinator, and Cecilia is the coordinated community response lead. And they met Sybil a few, I don't know, months, years back, whenever Sybil got um, had this itch she had to scratch to help even more people. So we're really thrilled to have them today. If you'd like to add anything more to your introductions, please feel free, and we will bow out until the very end. Thank you. Welcome, Christy and Cecilia.
Thank you so much, Kay. And welcome everyone to The Price of Love. My name is Christy Kelly, and this is my coworker, the beautiful Cecilia. Just a little bit about us. We are so thankful, as Kay said, Sybil Solomon had connected us to the Dibble Institute. I adore what the Dibble Institute stands for. One of our main job requirements, or components, I should say, that Cecilia and I do here at our work is work with teens and work on healthy relationships and prevention of abuse and things like that. So a little bit more about us is we are from SAFE, which stands for Supporters of Abuse-Free Environments. We are a domestic violence shelter that was started in 1987 by the Hamilton Seroptimus Group. And essentially, these beautiful women at the time saw a gap in our community. Our community is rural and small, and they saw a gap in emergency housing for survivors of domestic violence, and in this case, intimate partner abuse. So they started with quite literally a small network of safe homes. They had 2 or 3 homes that they would bring people into if they needed it. And today, now in 2025, we have a full property. We have an 8-bedroom emergency shelter on site, and we also have transitional housing on site. So I'll go ahead and go to the next slide, please. A little bit more about us. We are currently the only provider in Ravalli County, which is the county that consists of about 6 towns actually. And we're the only provider of emergency shelter services for survivors. We do provide emergency shelter, as I said. We have transitional housing and rapid rehousing programs. We have family care support. We even have a child care coordinator, and she's amazing. We have victim advocacy, legal advocacy services. We have a weekly support group because we know how important it is to connect with those around you that have had, unfortunately, similar experiences, and just connection breeds thriving in the future. And we also have our safe thrift store, which does pretty well, and we love it. All right, Cecilia, go right ahead.
Thank you, Christy. All right, so usually in every webinar, I'm just curious about your perspectives on what teen financial abuse. So when you hear the term teen financial abuse, what comes first to your mind? If you can join at menti.com, so you can just type or browse it through your phone or your computer, menti.com, and use the code 782-36614. And then you can share 2 or 3 words that comes to your mind when you hear teen financial abuse. All right, I will share the screen. So we see here unsafe adult, dad control, loss of ability, power, trafficking, inexperience, stealing, trauma, isolation, limiting access, peer pressuring, shame. Awesome. Manipulation, yes. I can see that control is the biggest letter in here. That means we have so many people mentioning this word, and it's true. Abuse is about control. Domestic abuse. All right, and then as we go, we'll talk about that a little bit, because sometimes when I mention about the word abuse, what comes to teenagers' mind or students' mind is always about physical abuse. All right, Kim, if you can share the poll real quick, the poll question. So here is an interesting question. Over 30% of young people ages 18 to 24 who have been in a relationship reported some form of financial control or exploitation by their partner. Do you think it's true or false? and I'm curious about the results. Great, 90% voted true. And that's true. And what's interesting is that research around the world, not only in the United States, show this number. Even though not exactly 30%, for example, a survey on young women in the UK in 2025 in March, which is pretty recent, shows that about 38% of teenagers aged 18 to 24 had experienced some type of economic abuse from a partner or ex-partner. And in the US itself, it's about 30% as well. So this is interesting because across the globe, the number is kind of about the same. And then today we will talk about that a little bit, some red flags of economic and financial abuse. We will talk about teen dating violence and examples. I think it's important to differentiate types of abuse before talking about economic abuse specifically. And then we will see examples of teen financial abuse, what studies say currently, and tips for parents or teachers to discuss financial safety with teens, because this is such a difficult topic when we talk about love and also money.
That's absolutely true. And just a quick overview, as Cecilia said, on teen dating violence. Just, this is so brief, but some statistics right here on the screen that you can see. 1.5 million high school students experience physical abuse from a dating partner in the US each year. 72% of 8th and 9th graders are in a dating relationship. And I think it's actually a little bit younger now, if we're being honest. 1 out of 3 high school relationships involves physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Nearly 2 out of 3 teens that are in an abusive relationship never tell anyone. We actually use these questions. We project them when we speak at high schools and middle schools, actually, with consent around our county. And usually we ask them what they think about these statistics, and many of them, have responses. And the 1 out of 3 high school relationships involves type of abuse. They all say, "Oh no, I don't think so." And we say, "Yes, this is actually a fact. Walk out in the hallway of your high school, and just when you're going to your locker or something, if you can notice 3 couples, think about that statistic. 1 out of 3 of them may have some sort of relationship abuse going on." So these are pretty heavy statistics, and we do share them with our teens so they have basic awareness of them. All right, next slide, please. Yes, we can absolutely share the source for the stats. All right, just quick. Again, this is generalized teen dating violence signs. On the side with the lighter pink box, you'll see relationship warning signs. And what this box entails is things that you may see from the outside looking into a relationship, or maybe a teen under your care, or at school or something like that will tell you about. These are relationship warning signs that we want all of the teens to know about, such as if their partner uses intimidation, insults, or I've seen many jokes that are actually not wonderful jokes of that same nature. If their partner has explosive temper or moodiness, they are pressured at all sexually in any way. Invasions of privacy, showing up unannounced. Many of our teens, and in movies and things like that, it is romanticized to suddenly have your partner show up unannounced. We need to be very aware of that and let them know they need to be aware of that. Monitoring their social media, that's a big one. We know many teens that share access to their social media accounts with their significant other, and then or even location apps on their phones and things like that. Love bombing. This is a term, if you haven't heard this before, it's essentially what it sounds like. It's all of the compliments, all of the affirmations, all of the things, but all the time. They are so extreme in their love. That's called love bombing. Or excess gifts. is also a sign. Extreme jealousy, insecurity, controlling behavior, isolation from friends and family, which can look like someone might be insecure and say, I don't think your family likes me. Can we just hang out by ourselves? Or I don't really like your friends. They don't seem to like me. Things like that. Now, in this other box on the screen, we have behavior signals. And what these are geared more towards how teens may act if they are experiencing these things. I do have an education background as well as Cecilia, and I saw several of these things sometimes in my students that I recognize now. Oh, wow, I should have counted this as a cause, if you will. So behavior signals, unexplained anxiety, depression, or low self-esteem in the student who is experiencing the violence, sudden mood swings, making excuses for their partner is a big one, hiding information from those they love, social withdrawal, excessive guilt or worthlessness, unexplained injuries such as cuts, scrapes, bruises, things like that. A drop in grades is a big one. And this one we see, just to say, I've seen this a lot in students, a change in friend groups or once loved activities. All of a sudden, someone who maybe enjoys a certain sport or activity at school does not do it anymore because their person that they're dating does not like that or doesn't like that they don't have enough time for them. Things like that. So I feel like these are really good to have on hand just to reference back to, because there are so many things in our society, but these are some red flags that we can look for.
All right, and thank you, Christy, for explaining a little bit about teen dating violence in general. Now, when we talk about teen economic abuse, this is the general description. So, a form of dating violence where a partner uses economic control. So this is basically broader than financial. It's not only about money, but also access to work, getting part-time job for teenagers, for example, even education, and then the way an individual have independent choices in managing their own money. So this can involve controlling finances, limiting access to money or essential resources. So we found a lot that most commonly limiting resources is actually pretty prevalent. And then exploiting financial information for gain, like sharing passwords, asking them, can we share Venmo password, Cash App password? Or some, which is pretty common lately when we did school presentation, is actually asking a partner to open joint account together, especially when they're like 18 years old. And then it's a common form of abuse that can lead to long-term financial hardship and negatively impact their future. So this is examples of teen economic abuse, and I'm sure we are all aware of these examples, but sometimes when we talk to students, this is something that is really, when we talk about abuse, most of the time we respond like, okay, so when we talk about abuse, it means like slapping, hitting, yelling at a partner, or physical touch or sex without consent. A few of them will recognize emotional abuse, like to illustrate when we go to school to do the presentation during consent, to do consent talk, we usually give scenarios during school presentations and ask teens to raise a green flag if the scenario represents a healthy relationship, and then yellow if it's unhealthy, and green and red if it's abusive. So one scenario that we commonly share is like, A ask their partner to go out to dinner. A says, you have a part-time job and make more money than me, so you should pay the bill. Some would raise yellow flags, but surprisingly, many also raised green flags. And when we asked during follow-up discussion, why do you think it's green? They were like confused. What's wrong with that? It's an act of care. You make more money, so you take care of those who don't make enough. Which sounds great, but this is where we need to emphasize that abuse is about patterns, and patterns grow out of habits. So one request to pay might not be harmful, but when one partner consistently pressures, controls, or exploits the other financially, it becomes economic abuse. On the other hand, other people will do some type of controlling, making one person become more dependent on purpose so that they see themselves like worth less than who they actually are. For example, controlling access to job, like you choose your job over our time together, something like that. So limiting resources and control. So this is just some examples, money and possessions, and then technology and accounts is pretty common one too, forcing partner to share passwords, and then selling belongings online. Control and dependency, this is what I mentioned before, control when and how partners use money, guilt tripping, and then work interference. And it may sound like all of this code. So we basically asked team in schools to write down examples of unhealthy or abusive behaviors that they have encountered, they have seen, they have heard, or they have experienced. And one of the most common phrases that came up was, if you love me or trust me, you should. So this is a red flag showing pressure and manipulation that is disguised as love. So this one, basically so many reasons, like I don't like the people that work there, or if you love me and have nothing to hide, you should share passwords. Yeah. So this is 3 common types of teen economic abuse. The first one is sabotaging. So Future Without Violence, some of you probably are familiar with this organization. They surveyed 3,000 teens in the US, and then National Adolescent Relationship Abuse Survey conducted by Scott and colleagues. They surveyed 1,700 students, and 68% experienced educational sabotage. For example, being pressured to skip class or drop activities. And then 67% experienced employment sabotage. So being pressured to miss the job shift or even change, like I don't like that job. Like, for example, I don't like that you do that job. It's not cool. So let's find another job. This is also pretty common among teens. And then control, facing financial control, like pressuring to give money, buy things that they didn't want. And then exploitation. So those teenagers who experience economic, I will just call it ARA or ARA, were significantly more likely to report transactional sex. So it's about three times, and also reproductive coercion. And I'm curious, when I read the paper, what's the mechanism? So during the survey and follow-up interview, basically survivors who experience economic adolescence relationship abuse, usually they also engage in transactional sex, because when someone's finances are being controlled, they may have fewer safe resources to go. So this dependency kind of grow, and as a result, the limited resources lead them or push them into transactional sex. And then reproductive coercion as well, about 3.2 times more likely. So survivor experiences economic ARA were 3.2 times more likely to report reproductive coercion, such as partner pressuring or forcing or sabotaging birth control access or pregnancy decisions. So basically, this type of abuse intersect with reproductive control as well. And I'm interested in learning more about the factors that may contribute to economic abuse. So they further survey that participants who already experience abuse usually tend to have lower help-seeking behavior, which kind of exacerbate the situation. So they're kind of in the loop without any support system. And then barriers to seek help, usually concerned about others finding out and then not being believed, and authority figures being notified. So this is another factor that interestingly also affect or heighten the likelihood of being economically abused. So the attachment style, we have that safe attachment style and then anxious and avoidant. Teens or adolescents with anxious and avoidant attachment style are more prone to economic abuse victimization, leading to leading to lower well-being. Because teens with this style, the anxious attachment style, tends to fear abandonment and may go to great lengths to preserve relationships. So they may tolerate controlling behaviors, including economic restrictions, because living feels too threatening for them. They may also have lower self-esteem based on this study conducted by Lee and colleague, which makes them less likely to resist or report abuse. And then the avoidant attachment style is also linked to economic abuse in a way that this type of style, teens with avoidant attachment tends to devalue closeness and emphasize independence, which in some case might be good, but then they may also underreport abuse or fail to seek help because they distrust others. Or they might normalize that. For example, I don't have money anyway. It's not a big deal if they control that part of my life. So this kind of behavior that normalizes types of abuse and see that as less dangerous than physical abuse. So this can trap them in cycles of financial dependence without support system as well. But so we talk about all the negative stuff, but what's interesting from the study is also they found out that healthy financial behavior weakened the link between attachment style and economic abuse. And this can be as simple as teaching teenagers how to track spending, having some types of journal, either using a certain app, because right now we can find multiple apps that can be used to help tracking spending, or just using simple books as journaling, like this is my income when I work part-time job, or this is the money that I have, how I will spend it. So this kind of healthy behavior can mitigate the negative impact of attachment style on economic abuse. So one thing that we can do is also at school, especially if you're educators, work with local bankers, because right now at SAFE, we work with local bankers and see the possibility for bankers to do a presentation on how to set up saving, be it online or traditional saving, and then letting them know, especially in the state of Montana, I'm not sure because you come from all different states, but in the state of Montana, when a couple open joint account together, there is no requirement for the bank to notify the partner or one side when another partner is taking all the money from the saving. So many young adults, particularly those who are 18 or older, they think this is some good way, to build trust with their partner and open joint account together. However, it's important to raise awareness that this can be risky, especially when co-owners are not notified when one party withdraws funds from the account completely. So we will move to safety planning. It may sound pretty basic, identifying safe adults, which when we actually go to school and people are actually in an abusive situation, that doesn't come to their mind right away. Now they can talk to peers, they can talk to teachers or relatives or an advocate. Building peer safety and know that they have a place to go is important. So we had a conversation with social work in here in the county, and she shared, and sometimes it's not about fixing things. Sometimes it's letting them know that they have a place to go. They have someone to listen to, because social connections has been shown to reduce psychological and physiological stress responses, including cortisol spikes and elevated heart rate. So studies with teens and college students show that feeling supported by peers and family and knowing their resources during stressful life events is linked with lower depression, anxiety, and trauma symptoms. So for parents or teacher or advocates, a simple question like, how has your dating experience been lately? Do you experience any challenges? This simple question can open a door to meaningful conversation. And when someone in an abusive situation, it's really easy for us we will be so eager to tell them to leave. But when they face economic and financial dependency, living can feel much harder. And constantly urging them or telling them, like, what do you see in your partner? It's time to leave. This constant advice can sometimes build a wall between you and them, making it more difficult to open up. So knowing resources and building safety net is important. And later on, I will share some safety planning worksheet that you can use at school. We have been using that during our health class in middle school and high school. And then create safe environments. It depends on your school, how open they are, but we have been posting resource cards in bathrooms where students can discreetly take them. So we share this love is respect text or local advocates with a poster and tarot cards where students can just take it and bring it with them when they want to talk to an advocate at SAFE.
All right, and this next slide jokingly seems like the scary part. Talking to teens about financial abuse or dating in this facet of dating violence. I'm joking, but we know that sometimes it can be difficult, and especially in that season of life, everything seems to be two-dimensional. It's happening so fast. We've got all of our emotions, all of our hormones, trying to figure out the world, trying to figure out what love is, all of it at once. And it can be difficult because sometimes they don't want to talk to us, especially if we're their parent. But all joking aside, these are some ideas of ways that we can talk to our teens about financial abuse. The big one that we have right here in this bubble, don't tell them what to do. Actively listen. This feels too simple at times, but really when we break it down, it's hard, especially if we are in some sort of counseling, educator, parent role. It's very difficult to slow down and actively listen without providing fixes. I am absolutely guilty of that. I like to fix, I like to help, I like to prompt ideas, right? But sometimes that is not the thing to do. Don't try to fix it or suggest immediate fixes. We also have being supportive doesn't mean telling your teen to break up. And why we put that on there is oftentimes, especially if teens are experiencing financial abuse, that's usually in tandem with more abusive things that are happening in their relationship. It could even be physical abuse. So thing one, this can be very dangerous to tell them to break up with their partner immediately, I would say, because that can put them in a dangerous territory. As we know, the most dangerous time to leave a relationship is when someone is trying to leave a relationship. And also the reason that why we put this here too is because sometimes that can we think what's being helpful can draw a wedge between you and that teen. And they think, oh, but I think I love my partner, so I must not be able to tell you anything anymore. You're telling me to break up with them. You're telling me to get away from them. And then all of a sudden, you as a lifeline just went away. So that's one reason that we put this on here. And then I reiterated, be an active listener. And let's face it, sometimes simply telling a teen to do something they definitely don't want to do is not always the best way to get to them. We also have using positive affirmations. This can be even just conversation starters, right? You know, I can tell how well you are doing in cross country. This is amazing. I'm so proud of you, or I'm so proud of you for working so hard in school. You seem like you're really pushing yourself. Things like that just kind of create that trusting environment, especially if you are an educator and you interact with teens that way, that may be one of the only ways that you can bridge that gap of communication. We have avoiding accusations. So approach the conversation from an angle that says, I want to help, and this is not your fault. One thing we do hear a lot of is that when we ask students during presentations why they think someone may not access help, is they say, oh, I don't want to feel stupid, or I don't want to feel like my choices were wrong. Things like that. Sometimes, again, in our willingness to help, it can come across as subconsciously, well, you made a bad choice, or I told you from the beginning that this person was domineering, right? That doesn't help. That actually, like I said before, just drives a wedge unintentionally. Our intentions may be great. Focus on relationship behaviors, not the domineering friends or partners. So rather than saying, hey, I've noticed that Sally or Mike is extremely controlling, you could, again, it's almost the psychology of how to talk to a student, asking them how they feel about specific behaviors. Or, hey, I noticed that must have bothered you. You seemed a little upset when that happened. How did you feel? Was I reading that correctly? Things like that. And then obviously, though we are almost suggesting to be careful and let the teen lead these conversations and lead these things themselves, obviously, if they need help or they're asking for help, intervene. And then you can offer to intervene, obviously, if they're afraid or unsure of how to go about things, which we encounter as well. You can always call resources. You can call us at SAFE, and our phone numbers at the end of the presentation. But even national resources such as the National Domestic Violence Hotline, they are amazing at helping create a safety plan, or you can run questions by them. I'm seeing this with my teen. Do you think this is abuse? All right, so next slide, please. This is a little bit of a reiteration, but here's our fun roadmap to safety planning for economic financial abuse. These are some things that you can either do with your teens or talk to them about. We have, starting from the left of your screen to the right, we have that fun little password icon. Keep passwords private. We know we live in such a digital world. This is easier said than done, and there are hackers and all sorts of things. But our kids and our teens are giving their passwords and their accesses to all of their friends, their dating partners, and all of the things. Implore them to keep their passwords private. If you are a parent, talk to them about possible parental controls, obviously, too. That is the key thing. And again, that seems so simple, but most of them that we speak to, at least at our local schools, acknowledge sharing passwords with friends. Also, on that same vein, the next bubble, identifying data private, such as social security numbers, etc. Also their location on their phone. I know that oftentimes as families and things like that, we like to know where each other are, but we know a lot of teens that share their location. So if there's any way of reiterating that over and over and over, please do so. The reason that social security number is on here, and I also put beware of social media posts about jobs that say things like no experience needed, or summer help only. If it is not an organization that you are familiar with or that is local and you have vetted already, this can be a way of gaining personal information from our teens. They might click on it, oh great, I don't need experience, bloop, and it'll prompt them to provide those identifying things. Okay, well, let us know your birthday, your age, your social security number. If we hire you, please put in your bank and routing number, right, for direct deposit and things like that. And a teen may be going through this thinking they're being extremely responsible, and they're trying to be, but they're actually giving all of their information away. All right, the bubble in the middle. Obviously, we try our best to keep open communication with the young people around us. So talk about what healthy relationships and finances look like. oftentimes, as Cecilia stated before, there are perceptions that may be cultural, maybe family related, or whatever it is, in teens' understandings of what's appropriate for financial healthy relationships. But remind them that healthy relationships mean there's no guilt. You can have your own finances, your own passwords, all of those your own things, and that is okay. And you can be in a relationship with your own things. There should be no controlling demands from your partner. And then we write unshared power, which is a term that we use often. So unshared power means that one person is more in charge of the decisions than the other. So we just remind them healthy relationships and finances. You can have your bank account, you can have your job and still be in a relationship. You don't need to give that up, right? You can both decide who is able to pay, and it shouldn't be you each time. Things like that. And no one should ever tell them to quit something or not have a source of income because of the other person. The second to last bubble, community resources, just knowing in your own state, in your own area, what type of resources that they can go to. And this is where, again, we would push for loveisrespect.org if you're looking for a national or quick fix. They also have a text number. So if teens don't want to get on the phone, call anybody, or don't want to Google something, they can literally text to Love is Respect and ask them some questions. And this is probably the biggest one, even though it's a tiny, small bubble. Remind them they are not to blame and they're not alone. I think our teens balk at the idea of, I told you so, right? I told you that this was happening to you. So just reminding them they're in a place that they are smart, they are not to blame, they are not alone, and they don't have to put up with controlling behaviors this way. All right, next slide, please. One thing about teens is obviously they are with their friends so much, of course, and we know this. So we wanted to touch on the idea of teaching peer safety, right? If your teen or a teen that you work with notices changes, maybe they notice their friend is anxious or more depressed or not hanging out with them anymore because they got a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and things like that, and they start to relay this information to you. What we like to do at schools is teach what we call 3 R's: recognize, reach out, and refer. So as Cecilia mentioned before, for the recognizing the red flags, when we do presentations, we quite literally have these little green, yellow, and red flags, and we have them raise up what they think is an appropriate behavior or not, which is just kind of a funny way to singe that into your brain. But helping them recognize what isn't right. And that can start by helping them recognize what is healthy. Positive is always a good thing. You know, this is what we should be seeing in this type of financial relationship. You should feel free. You should feel okay spending money on the things you'd like to spend it on. You should have no inhibitions about having your job, things like that. So recognizing the red flags. We tell students to reach out to the person they're concerned about and tell them that they're worried. Again, we also talk to teens similar how we were saying for us to talk to our teens. We don't want to immediately come at them with accusations or say, I never liked your boyfriend to begin with, or anything like that. We just want to open that lifeline that says, hey, I'm worried. I've noticed you seem sad, or you seem distant, or I haven't seen you enough anymore, or I noticed are you working that same job? What's happening? So those are things we can do, and that just opens that line of communication. And then, of course, if the situation seems to keep going, or they really have that recognition that it's not going well, we refer them to a trusted adult. So those are 3 things that you can teach peer safety for kids to notice things: recognize red flags, reach out, tell them that you're worried, and refer them to a trusted adult.
All right, and at the beginning, Kay mentioned a little bit about safeandsoundinfo.org. So in this website, we have all hands-on toolkits and handouts that teachers, educators, advocates, parents can use to start the conversation with teenagers or your children about money. So the first one is called the Price of Love card. So the link is in here in the PowerPoint. If you click that one, there is a downloadable PDF, and you can edit that as well. Add your school logo, for example, and just basically adjust that to your needs. And this card can be used to start the conversation about the forms or red flags of abuse. So we have 11 questions in there asking them, there are no rules about money and relationship, but this info can help the warning signs. And then identify the warning signs. And then the other one is, are you vulnerable link? So this is basically, and we're not encouraging victim blaming, but sometimes it's important to point out some behaviors that may increase the probability of being abused. So these are some examples of what can happen and first step when you do. So for example, do you find that you always put others first? What can happen? And then first step to not necessarily change that, but like understanding the impact of the behavior. And then the other resources is this is a handout to teen dating safety. And then because like if you attended the webinar last month with Dibble Institute, the presenter talked about how our brain works when we're in a stressful situation. Sometimes our limbic system or amygdala responds first with flight or fight or freeze, and now fawn too. So having safety planning on your hand is really good to use later on. And then the next one is money and relationship wellness quiz that you can also download as well through this link. And money habits cards or game. This is an interesting one to start a conversation with teenagers because each card ties to one of 6 money habits categories, whether you love security or status. For example, I like giving money to others, which means you like giving, and then I buy things to impress people, then you like status. So this kind of types of money habitudes as well. And then from then you can see, you can get a profile that highlights their dominant habitudes. And it's helpful to start the conversation to create strength or understand strengths and vulnerabilities of that habits when you're in a relationship. Well, that's it from us. Thank you so much for having us, and we will answer questions if
Yeah, I
there's
have
any.
a question here from Daviel. How do you engage, maybe it's you or Christy, how do you engage banks in a presentation that is age and financially appropriate? I haven't had any luck, so I'm interested in how you phrase it when making the ask of the bank.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. It's the first thing that I will say is like they are all busy people. So it's helpful to bring a proposal. So just outline, here's my goal, what I expect. So for us, we create a goal. We would like to have presentation on, for example, how to open joint account, how to avoid predatory lending, how just to make sure that my joint account with my teenager is safe. So basically, coming to the bankers with proposal is helpful. And then I'm not sure, but credit union usually they have a staff that is in charge for community education. So it will be the best thing is to reach out to that person or just call, hey, can I get a hold to the person who is in charge for community education, because that person is usually so willing to do the presentation to the community, to students, to schools, and for educators as well. So here in Hamilton, we have Clearwater Credit Union, and this person also give presentation and educational sessions for educators as well, so that educators can then pass the information or knowledge to the students. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
I'm sorry to jump in too, but Daviel, I'm sorry, I was typing and it didn't, I was too slow. But Cecilia answered it perfectly. And also along that same vein with safety guards, your local law enforcement department, we have one that goes around to different schools and talks about things like digital safety. So that goes hand in hand, I know, with banking safety, and they will do that for younger students. It may be a detective or a school resource officer, but I think that's just as helpful as having a banker come in as well.
Great, thank you. I would add that in our Dibble programs, we really help with young people identify faulty relationship beliefs, which takes you way upstream in terms of deciding if this is everybody needs to understand what is safe and not safe and have trusted adults in their lives to intervene. But sometimes you could just educate young people like, I don't need to go with that person if they don't know my name yet and they don't know anything about me. Like I just, not on my dance card. So there's a lot of good materials there as well. So thank you, Cecilia and Christy, for coming on board on this webinar. We're going to now move to the next slide, which is, thank you for joining us. We will put this all up. It'll be archived. The handouts will be there. The PDF of the slides, you can share it with others. You can use it as professional development in your organization. Some of you will want a certificate of attendance, and our beloved Kim will get that to you. Just email her, kim@dibbleinstitute.org, and she'll be happy to hop to it and get you a certificate. So thank you so much for coming. Next month, a super fun one, we're having Unpacking the Dibble Treasure Chest. So lots of people don't realize all the free resources we have on our website, both for young people or even the questions you asked our presenters today. How do I make my case to other organizations to bring relationship education in? So our amazing team, Erin, Rachel, Joanne, and Caleb, are going to cover funding, training tools, facilitation techniques, and our resources, our free resources online. So hope you can join us then. And I think that's it. So we're going to give you a gift of 4 minutes of your life back. So thank you all for coming today. Thank you for Cecilia and Christy for being generous with your time. Thank you, Rachel, for engineering. Kim, I know you're lurking in the background and been doing good things. So thank you all, and we'll see you in October. Take good care.